Has something like this ever happened while you've been playing the First Berserker Khazan? Seriously. I can't with this boss. I can't with this boss. This is the third boss of the game, bro. Trust me, dude, I get it. The Viper almost made me quit the game too. But don't let that make you a part of the 80% of the people who have never beat the game. It's time to get back in there, anime boy. We got bosses to kill. In this video, I'm going to break down every key feature, hidden secrets, best builds, skills, and everything you need to know in order to beat the First Berserker Khazan and make killing bosses an ease. Like and comment your most hated boss if you enjoy the video. Let's talk about dodging. Berserker Khazan is not like other Souls games. Dodging is a waste of your damage potential and a waste of your stamina. What you are going to want to do instead is focus on Brink guarding. When using Brink guard, enemies take consistent stamina damage. Notice how as I Brink guard, the enemy stamina constantly gets reduced. This is why instead of dodging, we're going to want to put all of our skill points into Brink guarding. In my playthrough, I'm using the overpowered spear build, which I'm going to talk about later in the video. So in this case, you'll want to dump all of your points in the skill breakdown. Doing so is going to make it so Brink guarding costs you almost zero stamina. On top of this, you're going to want to get Rod Smite. This allows you to attack immediately after performing a Brink guard. This attack will get insane amounts of stamina damage in, allowing you to exhaust your enemies and follow up with a devastating onslaught of attacks. It's going to take some time to get used to Brink guarding, so I recommend practicing against a boss you're comfortable with in order to get the hang of it. Upon starting Berserker Khazan, the game throws all types of stats and numbers at you. Yes, we know strength, proficiency, and willpower, they make you hit harder. But what is stuff like stamina damage increase, agility, and damage multiplier? Let's talk about it. Stamina damage is going to be how much damage you do to an enemy's stamina bar. In my opinion, this is the most important stat in the game. Raw damage is great, but it's hard to do those big flashy combos you have saved up when an enemy is constantly attacking you. Agility affects how much stamina it costs you in order to dodge and how quickly you regain stamina after using abilities. You're going to want to keep your agility at least above a C. In order to increase your damage multiplier stat, you're going to have to make your way over to the Blade Nexus. Here, you can access Khazan's memories. By collecting lore located around the map, you can upgrade your stamina damage increase, raw damage increase, and your damage multiplier stats. The damage multiplier stat only affects you when you have a buff that increases your damage in some way. For instance, if you received a buff from frontal assault damage that increases your damage by 10%, having the damage multiplier at 10% would now make that buff a 20% damage increase. Although this is good, I recommend leveling up that stamina damage so you can get those brutal attacks off constantly. Before we talk about the best builds, let's talk about backshots. In Berserker Khazan, backshots will wield you significantly higher damage. This is why the build I use is the spear. It allows you to easily get behind enemies and perform those backshots we need. When performing backshots, you gain rear assault damage increase. This will increase your attacks from the back significantly over frontal assault damage, attacks from the front. On top of this, brutal attacks from the back do almost double damage over those performed from the front. However, frontal brutal attacks will restore your stamina, so keep that in mind for later. Now that you understand all the key mechanics and fundamentals, it's time for you to get the best build. Almost 25% of players did not get past the Viper boss, so I'm going to throw in a build based off defeating him. After this, we'll talk about a build that'll help you kill Maluca, a more mid-game boss. At this point in the game, there is no blacksmith to build sets, but that doesn't stop you from gaining sets by farming. If you had already picked up that quest from the Blade Phantom at the crevice, you should be able to go back and farm Keshta the Bone Boy for an amazing spear build. You'll want to kill him until you have a full Soul Eater set. If 100% max stamina, 15% stamina recovery, and 15% brutal attack damage weren't enough, you'll learn Phantom Judgment, a skill that lets you completely reset an enemy's exhaust back to full. This will give you almost 6 to 7 seconds of increased damage to absolutely destroy your enemy. For skills, let's start off with the Swift Attack tree. The first skill you're going to want is Moonlight. This gives you access to Moonlight Stance, which greatly increases the amount of overall stamina damage you do, so you'll want to max out Moonlight Stance as soon as possible. After that, pick up Moonlight Stance Vitality. The spear build is a very combo heavy build, so having that extra stamina increase is pivotal. Now here's where your insane damage comes in. Full Moon. After just a few hits from a fully charged Full Moon, enemies will be exhausted, so we'll want to max out Full Moon immediately. For our chain abilities, we're going to want Shadow Reversal and Shadow Reversal Impact. These moves allow you to get behind the enemy with your attack chain, making it super easy to get in those back shots we mentioned earlier. For our defense, it's all about adding more stagger with that Brink guard. So first, we're going to want to pick up Breakdown. Immediately after that, max out Endurance so you can constantly Brink guard with no stamina loss. Rod Smite will be our MVP of the game. Using this skill right after a Brink guard will cause an insane amount of stamina damage, which is exactly what we want. And lastly, for our common skills, we're going to want Indomitable Spirit and Berserk Spirit to get as much spirit as possible. We don't need Reflection yet, but we are going to talk about that in our mid-game build later in the video. For Phantoms, we're going to want to stick with Keshta the Unyielding for the huge amount of stamina recovery that he gives us. This is going to allow us to continue our combos for a super long time. Here is the damage I'm able to do to the Viper using everything we've learned so far while having the Soul Eater set and the Spear build equipped. So starting things off with the Viper boss, he comes in with his 2 swinging attacks, which I immediately Brink guard. After that, I follow up with a chain of my own, getting his stamina down to about 50%, 60% mark, and then immediately follow up with 2 fully charged Full Moon strikes. As you can see, these do a ton of stamina damage and got him super low to already being exhausted. I position myself behind him and then make sure to follow up with another Moon Strike. But we have our Phantom Judgment, which allows us to fully reset an enemy's health down to 0 when we're fighting him. By the time he comes out of his exhaust, he's already trying to phase, so I can get a little bit more damage in there doing that little animation that he's doing. When he starts to wind up and do his wind attack, you don't want to be close to that or else you're going to get sucked in. And then I try to get as many headshots in as possible with the Javelin. Between the rod strikes and just pure combos going on, he's already down to about half stamina. From here, it's just Full Moons to victory because this move is absolutely broken. That's why you guys definitely need that one. After exhausting the boss and getting a couple back shots in, we finally send the Viper to the second phase. In the boss's second phase, he's going to do a lot more damage, but he's going to be significantly slower. If you were able to get the first phase down, I honestly think the second phase is significantly easier. The main thing you're going to want to do here is take it slow, because he hits slow, but he does hit very hard. And by this time, you should have enough health saved up to get him down. Your counter strike is key here. By successfully landing this, you can get the boss down to about half stamina, which is a huge up for you. Following up with attacks right after getting him down to this half stamina will easily lead to you exhausting the boss, where you can follow up with another onslaught of attacks, doing a similar combo like you did to the first phase Viper. After he gets out of his exhaustion around half health, he's going to go into phase 2, doing a similar spinning move to the Viper. I was playing it safe here, but I would use this time to definitely get in some Javelin attacks. When the room turns dark, he'll immediately turn into a Hog Rider, constantly throwing himself at you to attack. I recommend just dodging these attacks. I know that you can Brink guard them instead, but it's kind of a very risky timing and it's not worth it. So I'd highly recommend just dodging these attacks because it's much easier to get the window for that. Eventually he'll stop his Matador show, and once he finishes, you'll be able to go in with another onslaught of attacks. And the best part about this boss is he doesn't regain his stamina over time, so you'll be able to pick up right where you left off. Now, if you were already able to get past the Viper boss, you probably have tons of claimable treasures that the game doesn't even tell you about. If you open up the menu for the game, you'll see something called Defronus Codex. By clicking on it and scrolling through the tabs, you'll find that there is unclaimed gear in your codex. This is gear you'll naturally acquire in the game by completing challenges that the game has for you. This gear can range anything from small buffs to full-on amazing armor sets that you can use to destroy your enemy. If you want, you can actually look through all of these challenges and decide which rewards you want to get. Some of these are pretty easy to get and only involve you doing things like blocking a boss's attack or killing and performing sneak attacks on enemies. At this point in the game, you probably have your Brink guards pretty down, which is awesome. But what if I told you there's an even better way to exhaust your enemies? Reflection. Berserker Khazan's take on the classic Souls-like parry. Yes, Reflection is high risk, high reward, but properly performing one of these can almost fully reduce your enemy's stamina to 0 in just 1 to 2 properly timed parries. In order to get this, we're going to want to go back to pick up Reflection and Reflection Swift in the skill tree. This will shorten the amount of time it takes to line up your parry. I recommend picking up Reflection armor skills as well, to make any damage you take during a failed Reflections almost negligible. Reflection timing is going to be different for every weapon, but I'm going to be going over the timing with the spear. In order to properly time your Reflection, you're going to want to start your Reflection right as the enemy goes into their swing. Unlike a Brink guard, you don't want to wait right until the attack hits you. This will lead to a failed Reflection. You also don't want to do it too early just before the enemy swings. This will also lead to a fail. But once you get the hang of enemies' movements, start trying to reflect some of the attacks that you're used to. This can be very daunting at the start, but soon you'll be able to reflect enemies and exhaust them in mere seconds. You'll definitely want to master Reflection for the Maluca boss, as there are some attacks he does that will fully exhaust him in just one parry. Now, you should be a spear thrusting reptile killing machine, but Maluca is still going to give you some trouble. So let's go plus ultra with the Fallen Lord set for our mid-game build. This set is going to give you 10% charge damage increase, 25% stamina recovery on a Brink dodge for the occasion when you do have to dodge, and 10% increased damage to exhausted enemies. But the real highlight here is your full moon and spiral thrust damage increase. With 10% charge damage increase, this increases your full moon and spiral thrust damage by 25%, since you'll only be using these attacks as charged attacks anyways. Let's go over some of the skills to understand why this build's insane. Here is my complete skill tree for my Fallen Lord set. When we go over to our swift attacks, we can see we have our Moonlight stuff fully maxed out. Moonlight Persistence will increase the duration that you can keep Moonlight up. You want this buff up all the time, so this is really good to have. Then we come over here to Crimson Strike, which is going to give you health back on using a Brutal Strike after a full moon charge. With Moonlight Stance Wrath, you can convert the rest of your duration from Moonlight Stance into extra damage using your Crimson Strike, which gives a huge damage buff to both full moon and Crimson Strike. For our potent skills, we have 0 Point, which allows us to get a little bit of extra damage in, and then Spiral Thrust, which should be leveled up later. We grab Fighting Spirit just so we can keep the amount of spirit up all the time, but Spiral Thrust is not where you're going to be using all your spirit. This is actually going to be on the ability Trance in our chain tree. Coming over here, we have Shadow Reversal fully maxed out so we can get behind our enemies and cause huge stamina damage. The reason we like Trance is because Trance will buff all the damage of the rest of your attacks, so you'll want to max out Trance almost as soon as possible after your Moonlight Stance stuff. Trance should be up almost 90% of the time, kind of the same like you do Moonlight. We get Chaser Devour just so we can have a little bit of extra spirit once again when enemies are exhausted. And then we haven't upgraded anything from our guards since the early game. For common skills, we haven't touched anything in the resources area, but for Reflection, as we mentioned, you're going to want to get Armor, Reflection Swift, and definitely Reflection Expert once you get the chance. For brutal attacks, I have Brutal Reap so I can get extra health, and then I have Brutal Attack Absorb so I can have Phantom Form for those crutch scenarios. Coming over to Phantom Form, we actually don't have anything in this area leveled at all. These are just the basic skills that they give you. Phantom Form really is not for doing damage, it's really just for staying alive, so I wouldn't recommend putting too many points in this. From here on out, you should be a boss killing machine. So good luck on your journey, and make sure to like the video if you found any of these tips helpful, and please comment below any other tips you might have found useful so you can help other people out on their journey. I love you guys, and I'll see ya.